It's Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN Senior NBA Insider, joining us. Where are you right now, Adrian?
I'm in Vegas, Dan. Where else would I be during basketball season?
What are you there, placing a bet or something? Are you watching the G League? Why are you in Vegas?
I am watching the G League. Yeah, the ladder. Yep.
Oh, okay. When will we have an NBA team? Will we have an NBA team in Vegas or Seattle first?
It's a good question. I think the league is well past their concerns about Vegas that existed years ago. I think there's a sense around the league that Seattle deserves a team. They deserve a team back, but a lot there would depend on the arena and also what teams are moving. And it's not unlike the NFL. NBA teams don't. The league is much. They try to keep teams in places. You see more movement in the NFL. So we're not at the point right now where you have a league that wants to expand and have expansion teams. They're not there. And right now you don't have any teams that are really in a position to move. So I think it's going to be years and years, I think, before there's a Seattle, Vegas, any of these places end up with a team.
The only thing I thought was when the Suns owner was threatening to move that team. He's since walked that back there. But is everybody financially sound, all of these NBA teams?
Yeah, I think, some markets that, you hear, whether it's New Orleans, Memphis, I think there's local ownership in those places that are committed to staying where they are. Phoenix is a great NBA market, historic NBA market. They've been mismanaged into, irrelevance in the league. But there's nobody who thinks that, hey, you have to take a team out of there. That would be an arena play for the owner. And I think the league, I do think the league would push back on that. I don't think they want to leave that market. It's been too successful, over, the long haul for them.
Big shocker. LeBron said that he would love to play with Anthony Davis.
Really?
Yeah, then all of a sudden the ESPN echo chamber started, and here we go. This is front page here that the Lakers want Anthony Davis. All right, the likelihood of this happening, how can the Lakers make this happen and beat Boston to the punch?
They'd probably have to break into the Pelicans front office, get into their computer system, and create a trade that doesn't exist. New Orleans is not trading him before the trade deadline. Well, to me, never say never, but there's no indication that the Pelicans, would even consider that before the trade deadline. Now, after the season, it's possible if Davis tells them, hey, I'm not going to sign my 5-year, $239 million Supermax extension this summer, which is typically now when you're a year out of free agency, in and of itself, it almost becomes a trade request because you're telling the team you're rolling the dice that you're going to lose me for nothing next year. And typically, if you were going to trade an Anthony Davis, you'd want to do it around the draft. If you were getting picks from a team in that draft, you want to be able to select the players. And, you mentioned in the intro the idea that, they can't – Boston, because they have the Supermax off deal with Kyrie Irving, they can't have two guys on it. And so at the same time, but you could agree in principle to a deal around the draft and not execute it till after July 1 if you wanted to get at Boston's picks this year. But right now, the Pelicans are still trying to do deals to improve the team around Davis. They've had a lot of injuries. I think they think when they're healthy, they're a middle-tier Western Conference contender in a group with a bunch of other teams. Now, is that enough for Anthony Davis? That remains to be seen.
But if I look at, and I've pleaded with the Lakers publicly to have patience, let these kids develop, let them learn how to play with LeBron, be around that circus that is LeBron. But, it feels like, Magic is such a competitor that he, hey, I want to make this team great. And I just feel like they may cash in some of these kids there, the chips with these kids. I don't know if it feels like Ingram doesn't really fit here. I don't know if Ball fits there as well. Like, what can you give up that's going to be interesting here if you were able to put a trade together? What would pique the Pelicans' interest with the Lakers?
Everything. everything, because Boston, and there'll be other teams. Listen, there'll be other teams out there because it's Anthony Davis. Like you saw with Jimmy Butler. I'm not comparing their impact, but there were teams who didn't have a promise that Jimmy Butler would re-sign with them, who were willing to trade for him with a year left on his deal, the way Toronto did with Kawhi Leonard, the way Oklahoma City did with Paul George. For a lot of markets, you can't get Anthony Davis in free agency. Toronto, Oklahoma City, they couldn't get those players if they were free agents. Mm-hmm. So they have to trade for them and then sell them on their program, their organization, the city, and we could pay you more than anybody else. In a lot of ways, the Lakers have shown great patience and maybe too much patience, because you go back 2 years, they could have had Paul George if they put the number 2 pick in the draft, and that would have been Lonzo Ball. I don't know that Indiana would have selected Lonzo Ball, but hypothetically, Lonzo Ball, or let's say that 2 pick, or Brandon Ingram would have got them Paul George. Would you look back and do that now? Of course you would.
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard last summer, they could have put Brandon Ingram and I don't think San Antonio had great interest in Ball, but there was a package they could have put together to get them Kawhi Leonard. Do you think Kawhi would have left in free agency once he was in LA? He probably wouldn't have. So they have shown patience holding on to those players, but there's no question they'll cash him in for Anthony Davis. The ideal scenario for the Lakers would be they have the cap space to sign a max free agent this summer. I think what they'd like to do is get a big free agent, sign him into their cap space, then take all those young players and a pick or two, whatever it would take, then trade it for an Anthony Davis or another big, maybe if there's another star player that's available. But they've got to get one of those stars in free agency. I'm not sure who they're the front runner for now. So if they don't get one this summer, then there's going to be great pressure for them to get another star to pair with LeBron, and obviously there's none bigger out there than Davis. And
Danny Ainge, as good as he is, and they've been in love, I think, with Anthony Davis. I don't think that's been any great secret here. What do you think the Celtics are capable of doing? Because I look at Tatum as off limits, but it feels like they got picks, Brown, Rozier, Smart. Feels like that they could beef up a proposed trade there. But what kind of scenario do you see Boston playing?
Yeah, Boston has shown great restraint. I mean, look what they gave up to get. I mean, look back what they gave up to get Kyrie Irving. They didn't give up. They didn't give up much, and they were able to do that. Now it'll be different with Anthony Davis, but yeah, they have targeted him. Listen, everybody in the league's targeted him. I mean, everybody would love to have Anthony Davis, and I think for Boston, they've been, they made calls last season to New Orleans, and Anthony knew they did, and went in, and I talked to him about this last year. He went into their GM's office and said, hey, I hear that they're calling about trading for him. And he said, yes. Del Dem told him, yes, they are. No, we're not trading you. There's no offer they can make that we would move you out. But you're right about Tatum, and I think that'll be the wild card. I think if they were willing to put Tatum in a deal, there's nothing the Lakers could do. There's nothing they could. Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, none of those guys match up to his potential and production so far. But I think any deal Boston would do, they would love to be able to keep Tatum and not move him out. But it's Anthony Davis, and he's 25 years old, and so I think everything would be on the table if you felt like you had a chance to get him. But New Orleans right now, they're not in a deal mode with him, and remember, he's got the rest of this year and a whole nother year left on his contract.
I was also curious your take on this angle that I saw with a couple of writers, and that is that LeBron is putting public pressure on the front office with the Lakers. Hey, I'd love to play with Melo, and I'd love to have Anthony Davis. Is he putting public pressure on the front office to do something?
Well, if he wanted Carmelo Anthony, he'd be on the team. I mean, they had every chance. I mean, listen, it's very hard to get it's very hard to get Anthony Davis. It's easy to get Carmelo Anthony. If you want Carmelo Anthony, the Rockets will waive him, and your team will sign him to a minimum deal. So the idea that he would have to go public about Carmelo Anthony, I don't buy it, and I don't think anybody else does in the league.
I don't think he wants Melo. I think he's just doing a solid to say, hey, that's your guy. And I think that's where LeBron is just saying, hey, I'd love to play with him, and leave it at that, even though we're saying, well, wait, you're LeBron. You want him, you can have him.
I mean, Dan, if you wanted to play with him, he'd be in layup line with him this weekend, right? So
when Anthony Davis comes to town.
Yeah, and this isn't, the Portland's GM, Neil O'Shea, last year when everyone was talking about Damian Lillard and him going to the Lakers, and Neil had a quote publicly where he said, hey, this isn't the Rucker League in New York. LeBron doesn't just get to pick the guys he wants to come play with them. We have this thing in the NBA called contracts. And Damian Lillard's under contract. He's not going to play. He's not going to be playing for the Lakers. And I think sometimes we forget that. He doesn't just get to pick the guys he wants. This isn't the All-Star Weekend thing, right, where he's the captain and he's pulling guys into the Lakers. It doesn't exactly work that way. I know some people in the league would like it to work that way, but it doesn't.
Are we going to see maybe more beefed up offers from the G League to attract some of these kids coming out of high school?
Yeah, I saw Rod Strickland here and Allison Feaster, who are leading that program from the NBA, where they're out educating high school players and their families about that option. It's not going to be a big number of players. Like, I know it is $125,000 to elite players to come in here and play, but, listen, that is a significant amount of money, but the life in the G League is so different than big-time college basketball, and there's a lot of 6 a.m. flights connecting through Midway in Chicago to go play the Memphis Hustle in front of nobody. That's not the same as playing at Duke or Carolina and, packed arenas, national TV, charter jets, 5-star hotels. There's actually girls on campus in college. You're at the Days Inn in Iowa. And so this isn't glamorous. This isn't for an 18 or 19-year-old kid. This is not an optimum, but for players who, for whatever reason, just don't want the academic part of it, get in a situation where they're not eligible, this becomes a viable option. But I don't think they expect any more than a handful or less in any given year because they're not just handing these out. Like, you've got to be an elite player to be eligible for it. They got to see you basically as a first-round level pick.
Woj, safe travels. Thanks for joining us as always. We appreciate your time.
Dan, thank you. Have a great holiday.
You too. Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN Senior NBA Insider.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.